to be daring, baby, dance the night away. I let my head down if I want.
Hey guys, welcome. It is officially crock pot or slow cooker season, and so today I'm going to share with you some super easy but very delicious dump and go crock pot recipes. So I think you guys are going to love these. Let's go ahead and jump in and get to cooking. So the first up is taco chicken, and this was a huge hit with our family. I made nachos with it, but you could also do burritos or tacos. And to the crock pot, I put in 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and then sprinkled 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning over the top of the chicken. Then add in 1 can of corn, and I did not drain this. And then a can of Rotel. We chose to do mild because my kids are not a fan of anything too spicy. Then I added in a can of black beans. You can do whatever bean you like. I did drain and rinse these. Then 1 stick of cream cheese. Put the lid on your crock pot. Set the crock pot to low and cook this for 8 hours or on high for 4 hours. Once everything is cooked, take the lid off of your crock pot, and then you're gonna shred the chicken. You can use 2 forks, you can do a meat masher. All I had was a whisk, and it actually worked great because the chicken is just so tender, it falls right apart. But make sure that all of your chicken is nice and shredded and the cream cheese is mixed all the way through. Then I decided, like I said earlier, to make nachos with mine with all of the fixings. So you can do this, or you could make burritos out of it. You can make tacos, which would be great. Really, the sky's the limit. You could get really creative. But I just sprinkled some cheese over some chips. There's no need to melt the cheese because the hot taco chicken is going to melt the cheese for you. And then I just kind of used whatever we had. I had some lettuce, some shredded lettuce. I also did some cherry tomatoes that I had chopped up a little bit. I also topped mine with some fresh avocado. You could also do guacamole. And then I personally love olives. Who else loves olives? And I also finished everything off with a squeeze of lime. It's super easy, and you could make this into anything that you want. Next up is Swedish meatballs with this delicious gravy. So I'm starting out with some beef broth, adding it to my crock pot, and then I'm whisking in some flour. I took my sweet time doing this because I didn't want it to turn into clumps. And then the recipe calls for cream of chicken soup, and I actually wanted to make this from scratch, and it's super easy to do. So I'll go ahead and link a recipe for that below as well if you want to do that too. If not, you can totally go with just a good old can of Campbell's. Stir that all together and then add in a packet of onion soup mix. You could also make this from scratch, but I didn't want to take the time, so I just went ahead and used a packet. Stir that in really well, and then add some allspice and some nutmeg. This part seems a little different, and it definitely is noticeable, so if this is not your cup of tea, you can totally omit these spices, but I loved the flavor that it gave. And then this is the easiest part. Add in a bag of frozen meatballs. Give it one last stir, then put the lid on your slow cooker, and you're gonna cook this on low for 5 hours. Everything is all cooked in here. It's just making sure all the flavors are well put together. Then the last thing you're gonna do is add in some sour cream. And some heavy cream. And give it one last stir. You're gonna put the lid back on the Instant Pot and cook it for about 15 to 30 minutes just to let everything thicken up and turn into a nice gravy. We served our meatballs over mashed potatoes. You could also serve these over noodles if you wanted to, but this was a great combination. And then I just added some parsley to give it a little bit of color. This was a really super tasty dish, and my kids loved it. The next recipe is beef stew. This is a classic and super easy to do in your slow cooker. So the first thing I'm doing is adding some flour to a bowl. And then adding in some garlic powder and some salt and pepper. Then add in your beef, and you're gonna give everything a good stir and make sure that every piece of beef is coated in this flour mixture. I have some oil in a pan and it's all nice and hot, and I'm gonna add in some of the beef and brown the outside. This is not meant to cook it all the way through. This is just to get a nice brown on the outside. And also make sure that you don't do all of the meat at once. You wanna make sure that everything has a chance to brown on all sides. Then to that same pan, I added in some onions, and I'm gonna just cook these down until they start to brown and caramelize a little bit. Then add the beef and the onions to the crock pot, as well as a carton of your favorite beef broth. Add in some Worcestershire sauce. Did I say that right? Now it's time for the veggies. I'm doing some gold potatoes. You could also do russet, but I love these creamy golds. Some carrots and some celery. Then add the veggies to the crock pot. Stir it all together, and then you're gonna add in some herbs. You can either do dried herbs, but we like to use fresh. You'll need some rosemary and some thyme. This recipe calls for vegetable juice. I didn't have any on hand, but I did have some tomato paste, so I just went ahead and mixed this with a cup of water because the recipe calls for a cup of tomato juice, and this turned out just fine in the recipe. Put the lid on your slow cooker, and you're gonna cook this on low for 9 hours. Once the stew has cooked for 9 hours, it's time to add the thickener, and the recipe calls for cornstarch, but I actually like to use arrowroot flour instead, so you can use either one you want. I just chose arrowroot this time. Add that to the stew, and then you're gonna add in some frozen green peas. You also want to make sure that you salt and pepper the stew at this point to taste. To serve the stew, you can serve it however you like, over rice or egg noodles or just as is. We chose to do rice tonight. We just did the 5-minute instant rice, super easy. But this stew is a great recipe, especially for the cold nights we have coming up. So go ahead and add this to your repertoire. You're definitely going to want to have this recipe on hand. The last recipe I'm going to share with you is the most delicious tortellini soup. I don't know which one's my favorite, this recipe or the taco chicken, but this one is definitely up there. So first, chop 1 small onion and 3 cloves of garlic, as well as about a cup of carrots. Then heat up some oil in a pan, and once it's hot, you're going to add in some Italian sausage. You can either use it just like this or the kind that comes in the casing. Either is fine. And then you're gonna brown the sausage. Once the sausage is browned, take it over to your crock pot and add it in. And then in that same pan, you're gonna cook your onions until they are translucent. At the last minute, add in your garlic and only cook it for about a minute so it doesn't burn. Once the onion and garlic is done, take that over to your crock pot, add that in, as well as your raw carrots, and also add in some Italian seasoning. Then add in some tomato paste. I love using the kind that comes in these squeeze tubes because if you don't use all of it, then you can just put it back in the fridge and save it for later. So add in your tomato paste, then add in some chicken broth or beef broth, whatever kind of broth or stock you want to. I'm using chicken stock today. Give everything a really good stir and then put the lid on your slow cooker. Then cook this on low for 8 hours or on high for 3 to 4 hours, just until your carrots are cooked all the way through. Now it's time to add in the last minute ingredients that don't take very long to cook. So add in a package of fresh tortellini. You could use frozen, but I think fresh is best. Add in some heavy cream, and then you can also add in either kale or spinach, whatever you prefer. This recipe also calls for flour to thicken the soup, but I personally liked it a little on the brothier side. But if you prefer it thicker and creamier, then you can definitely add the flour in. Then put the lid back on the crock pot and cook it for another 30 minutes. This soup is so good and so easy to serve it. I served it with some bread, a little baguette that I sliced with butter and garlic salt and put that in the oven for just a little bit to toast it up. This soup is so easy and so delicious. You're gonna love this for fall. I actually sprinkled a little red pepper flakes because I personally like heat, but my children do not, so you can serve it however you like. So that is gonna be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you loved all these recipes. If you try them, make sure you tag me on Instagram at Allie_Gooch. I also hope that you stick around and subscribe for more recipes like these. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.